Hey everybody, Doug here from 2 Plus Stuff, and today we are doing another player made. I started this before my big move from Seattle, and essentially what it is just talking about different supplements and mini games and those kinds of things that awesome fans in this community have made for Age of Sigmar. Last time we did Warcry, like in the gladiatorial pits and stuff like that. So what we're going to do is head over to the shared screen here, and we're going to walk through Sigmar Cart. So as I said, here we are, Sigmar Cart, Death Racing Through the Mortal Realms. And we have David Hayes. Thank you so much for sending this in, brother. It's awesome. Playtested by the Sons of Slambo out of San Antonio, which is awesome. I'm actually from San Antonio. Hey, hey. And then we're going to walk through kind of how this all works. So essentially, this game should be played with 4 to 8 players. This is meant to be incredibly fun. Okay, if you're familiar with the game, what was it called? Speed Freaks, that came out with the new 40K Orc race car guys. You're going to get similar vibes, where it's an aggressive game. You're attacking your opponent. You're getting buffs along the way. And honestly, it's not a matter of who wins the race so much as who lasts the longest in some fashion, but it looks very fun. So they go through basically what kind of units you can choose. You're basically choosing what tier of game you want to have. So you can have either very, very light racers, middle of the pack, or heavy. And I'm going to just skip ahead here. We'll throw this down here. They break down the different tiers with all the stats you need for all the models that are included in this. So let's say you wanted to play a Boingrot Bounder. Boom. Here we go. Boingrot Bounder, Gloomspite gets, it tells you exactly what your speed is, your save, and how many wounds you have. So that information is right there. It's very nice and accessible on this document. Really appreciate that. And essentially, you accrue wild dice for any number of points that you are below the highest costed racer, meaning the weaker guys get a little bit of a buff. They get extra wild dice, and we'll talk about what those do later on. So that's kind of the pseudo balance that it has, but essentially you're picking a tier, you're going all in, picking your favorite units that can race in that tier. Now as for the track, they lay out some concepts as far as really should be 4 foot, I believe, is kind of what they're going for here. This is done on a 6x4. The only real rules that there are associated with this is that you have to be careful not to block people in. So they suggest having the roads be at least 4 inches wide. That way you can move around folks. You don't have to stay outside of 3. You have to stay outside of 1 in this format, which is a great change. And so it's just a matter of, hey, let's just try to not have a road where everything gets super blocked. Now, as far as the race goes, there are a few adjustments here. So you obviously, pole position is determined, if that's the order in which you are lined up and that kind of stuff, is determined same as deployment. All racers roll a d6, then choose their starting positions based in descending order. Players who tie in the roll will re-roll when it comes time for them to deploy. First round is completed in order of the pole positions, and phase structure is mostly the same as AOS proper. In subsequent rounds, the players act in order from last place to first based on their positions at the starting round. So it gives you a lot of ways to manipulate the game in terms of if you're last, you can shoot the guy in front and kind of speed up and get there with him. It just favors that. There's no runaway victories, I don't feel like. I like that quite a bit. And there's a few notes for adjustments to the phase, but essentially, yeah, you start off, you have your hero phase, your movement, shooting, attacking, charging. You can do all of those things with a few modifications. And I'm not going to go into super harsh detail about. I want you to read this for yourself and try it out, but it seems really fun. What's nice is that racers don't truly die in this one. So if a racer is slain, their model is placed on its side and remains on the track as an obstacle, but it can be climbed over. They will heal X at the start of their next turn, plus an additional X per turn they have been out. So if you're at the light tier, you'll heal 1 wound, D3 if it's a mid tier, D6, and that kind of stuff. So basically, the bigger your dude is, the more wounds he has total, the more you have potential to heal. Once fully healed, stand the model upright and continue your turn. So what that means is you're going to miss a turn just by being shot down. Okay, it's going to happen, but if you're doing light tier stuff, you'll bounce back pretty quick because most of those are 1 to 2 wounds. I think a high end is 3 maybe. And then the heavier tiers, you're going to probably be out only 1 to 2 rounds. But again, this affects everybody. And I like that. So once, you're not truly dead, you just get back into the race. And this is, if we're talking Mario Kart, you get shot with the blue turtle and your guy kind of spins off and crashes for a hot second, and then he gets back into the race. And then we come to what I think are sort of the best parts of this, okay? So the power dice. Up to 4 rows of D3s are laid out across the track, with 1 D3 per racer in each row. So if you're familiar with Mario Kart, you'll know like the little boxes that are all across the racetrack, 1 for every racer at least, that kind of thing. You may pick up 1 and only 1 by moving across it. Roll at the end of movement phase, during which you picked up, and consult the table below. So you get a D3. If you roll a 1, you immediately move an additional inch. On a 2, you get +1 attack on one of your weapons until your next turn. And if it's a 3, you get +1 save. And so this is the equivalent of the random treasures you pick up during Mario Kart, okay? Power dice regenerate on the 3rd round after they are picked up. So they do come back, but it does take a little bit of time. But depending on the size of your racetrack, they'll definitely be ready for you by the time you come full circle. Now they do leave room for you to place your racing stuff in different realms. To be honest, I'm not sure when this document was first made, like if they're considering current realm rules and that kind of stuff. I went through the basic, the new realm rules we have since the new edition dropped, and I don't see anything that seems like it would be super like punishing or aggressive like that. I don't know. But that's when you want to walk through with your opponent. But it would be cool if you had additional abilities or that kind of stuff, because it would certainly change attacks and stuff like that. Now, next up, they did leave some room here for special terrain. And what they really did, and this is super fun, they took a whole bunch of faction terrain, like the Herdstone, the Feculent Gnarlmaw, the Wildwood, and basically gave it rules to match this kind of format. And I won't go through them each individually, but essentially, for the Feculent Gnarlmaw, like all racers are affected by both terrain abilities. So you can get hurt by being near it, but you can run and charge. Like it allows you to kind of get a little speed boost. I like all of them. And it goes rule by rule into what's on their actual sheet, and so we don't need to go do that. But they added quite a bit to it. This next section I thought was incredible, which is support heroes. Okay, and I'm going to read this verbatim because it's going to sink into a few folks how cool this actually is. So, heroes with the abilities that affect models in range can also be placed along the edges of the track and will affect all racers that are within the ability's range. Each player may place 1 in the crowd. So each guy playing the game can throw a dude along the sidelines, and to keep things limited, it is best not to overlap these areas. If the hero's ability is a command ability, it's assumed to be active at all times. For example, a Blood Secretor of Khorne would give all racers +1 attack to melee weapon profiles while wholly within 16 inches. If a shooting attack goes across the crowd where the hero is standing and misses, the damage is specifically allocated to that hero. So you have a chance to shoot support heroes as well. Now they also have what they call alternately a pit crew, which is simply that instead of having your guys scattered throughout the board, you can have them in a singular place, and you can say that it'll only affect your model, but again, you have to go all the way around the board to go get it instead of having these little buffs here and there affecting you and your opponent. It's kind of a cost-benefit thing. There is also a solo play variant of this, and what it essentially does is it lets the AI control whoever is you're racing against. And it's something that I'd be interested to do, absolutely. I need to get my table set up, but once I do, I will absolutely try this out, because I like the idea of an AI that just has a very simple base. Again, we're all just trying to make it around the track and shoot each other along the way, but how you go about doing that and navigating the computer, computer in a sense, I think is a really interesting point of, I don't know, I mean, just tension, I guess. And then down below there is a designer's commentary, and I do suggest you read this because if you're having trouble understanding a concept in the game, they really do spell it out. So essentially, they walk through their balance in playtesting because it became apparent that there are some units simply too fast to be fair in their points bracket. So without other racers of the same speed being present, you have things like Skyfires and Lightened Gyrocopters, and you can choose to ban them, and they kind of give suggestions on how to approach those things. Honestly, I think if you're going to have some units, unless everyone's taking those kind of questionable-ish units, I would say back off of them. Again, this is meant to be a simple way to play with models that you already own, and everybody is going to own some basic little thing, right? Whether it's a guy on a horse or a grot, or, you know, I mean, just something besides the fastest and the craziest models that the game produces. They make exceptions for legendary racers. You can also use mounted heroes so long as everyone agrees and there's not a huge points discrepancy. Again, doing that would be really, really fun if you're all playing those things. I think that's kind of the key in my opinion. And then I love this in race duration. In playtesting, we never exceeded a single lap around the standard 4x6 table. This is mainly due to play being slowed as I was introducing the rules and we were making tweaks on the fly as needed as it became apparent. Once a group has a solid grasp on the system, if you are playing on a smaller table, 2 to 3 laps is probably reasonable. To me personally, this kind of game system lends itself to small things at your home. Now, the real challenge is, on one end, I think a smaller track means you'll do more laps and it can be more like down to the wire kind of a thing with every movement phase and every attack. The flip side being your track needs to be big enough so that as, you know, frankly, that you can get around each other, right? That 4 racers can go up the board and be near each other, and if a few of them get knocked out, when they become obstacles while they heal and regenerate, they're not blocking the actual racetrack. So I think that's the most important thing. But truthfully, I don't know. I would probably err on the side of the smallest table possible to accommodate enough room. That's kind of my general opinion as I looked at this over. Now, of course, COVID did throw kind of a wrench into their design plans as you can't really get together and play test like too much, but I do like the idea. And they basically, this is, as of GHB 2020, the racers that are available to the various factions for each, I don't know, for each army. And then these are the ones who, like, they're more designed for this system. And I would probably consider this to be your racing roster. Like, probably wouldn't stray too far out of this, but even then they still have things like gyrocopters listed just for your convenience if you choose to use them. You could also, if you have some of those units that are questionable at best in terms of like how effective they are, meaning that they're too good, you could always like sub it in for something else. And every army has stuff that you can use. You probably have at least a dozen of these things in your collection. They are quite a bit of fun, so I really would suggest you check this out. I am going to have a link to this document in my description down below. Again, thank you to the sons of Slambo and David Hayes for putting this together and reaching out to me. David's been super patient with me because he sent it to me right before I moved, and I was like, I need to wait. And then the Marathi book came out, and I was like, I need to wait. But I do think things like this are an immense amount of fun because they just give you a chance to use things you own in new ways. And it's really fun because if you have somebody in your life who doesn't have an interest in like AOS or Warcry or something like that, but you can say like, no, we're basically going to play Mario Kart. Like, that's a different sales proposition for people, and you might get some folks that we're not interested to be able to come to the table, roll dice. And because the system is loose, like, is generally speaking based on AOS in terms of like the actual number of phases and how that all works, translating this, which is very open and acceptable and meant to be fun and goofy, into, well, now you actually know how to play Age of Sigmar, is not a hard stretch at all. So I think it's awesome. It's the kind of thing I'd love to see in a White Dwarf. David, you knocked it out of the park, brother. Thank you all so much. And if you have a player-made thing you want to submit, go ahead and let me know. Shoot me an email. My email address is in the About section here on the channel, and we'll talk about it. So thank you all so much for watching, and happy wargaming. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that video. It was made possible by the folks over here to the left. These are my top supporters over here on YouTube and on Patreon that keep this channel going. If you'd like to learn more about how to become a supporter and get some cool things in the process, like exclusive pictures and interactions with me, and get your questions answered here on the channel, go ahead and click any of the links down below or the join button on the community page over on YouTube. Regardless of your choice, I wanted to thank you so much for joining me with this video, and I look forward to seeing you in my next one. Happy wargaming.